these people, so many of them are actually former presidential candidates.
Well, the research I was doing just before I called you was I'm doing a series of uh, my regular hot mic series, but I'm doing a bunch of them called a counter revolution of competence. And the first one is going to be I'm going to look at the Trump's new appointee versus the pre-existing Biden appointee. And the first one is Tulsi Gabbard versus Avril Haines, I think her name is, a national director of intelligence. Uh, Haines is an attorney. She was a lawyer, and came up through the bureaucracy and ended up getting appointed as the director of national intelligence versus Tulsi Gabbard, who did a tour in Iraq with the medical corps, was awarded a combat medical citation, among others, and just going to the fact that it's the outsiders who bring real world experience to these jobs as opposed to the people that have been inside the machine from the beginning. I mean, if you're a political science major, and she went on and during the Trump administration, she taught at Columbia, which was the home of the Frankfurt School, where all the Marxism came into the country via Columbia University, and she is a theorist. Tulsi Gabbard has practical experience. She did a year as a military policeman in charge of an entire military police platoon in Kuwait. When you see body cam footage from police officers and what they have to deal with on a daily basis, you realize that their world is a very clear cut world. You get lied to all the time. The decisions you have to make can be life or death decisions. And Tulsi Gabbard is coming from a place like that, while Avril, the existing national director of intelligence, is coming from a purely theoretical background. And there's a big difference between these two things in terms of how effective you are in the world. This is why Trump is such an interesting president, because he's the only president that I'm aware of. Certainly he's the only president since FDR who had nothing to do with the government before he became president of the United States. The next closest was Dwight Eisenhower, who never held any political office, but he was in fact a general in the military. So he obviously had a role with the government his entire life. But Donald Trump's the only person who's never touched a government job except for president of the United States. And so he doesn't look at things like a politician. He looks at them like a deal maker. And the beautiful thing about a deal maker is if you look at a geostrategic problem like Russia versus Ukraine, and you look at it as a politician, you start thinking things like, well, whose side are we on historically, and what's the best national security interest of the United States, and all of these other things, which are real concerns. But if you look at it as a deal maker, what you basically do is you say, okay, Vladimir Putin wants this, but will accept that. Zelensky wants this, but will accept that. Trump says he can end the war in a week, and I suspect he might be right, because the one thing that Trump understands and that nobody else, certainly not Biden or anybody in the current administration understands, is that if you're going to, just as one example, if you're going to end the war in Ukraine, the solution has to consist of something where both Putin and Zelensky can go back to the people and say, we won. That is the prerequisite for a peace deal in Ukraine, is for Putin to say we won and for Zelensky to say we won, and have them both be able to make enough of a case so that their own people can believe them. This is what a deal maker does. Mm-hmm. And politicians, especially diplomats, just don't think this way. But he's a real estate guy. He says, I want this, you want this. We can find a way for us both to go home happier than we were when we came into this meeting. And I think that gives the whole world tremendous possibilities,
Well, same with China. I know Russia and Ukraine. They're neither later going to accept an all or nothing answer, right? Not a solution. So they got a deal, and that's what Biden wasn't doing. He wasn't providing, or urging them to come with a solution. It was just, we're going to support Ukraine as long as it takes. But how long was it going to take?
Right. And with China, exactly. And they use diplomatic language or political language. And Trump can basically say to Putin, what do you want? And Putin says, I want Ukraine. And Trump could say, well, you're not going to get it. So what will you, since you're not going to get that, what will you take? And then you can start horse trading and start finding whatever the individual conditions are that allow Putin to go back and say, see, we won, and allows Zelensky to go back and say, see, we won, and the next thing you know, these people aren't getting killed, and it's a horrible thing, man, with these drones. I mean, drones are like precision guided hand grenades. I mean, you're just watching these. I a big military history guy, and my entire life I've thought there cannot have been worse experience in human history than World War I in the trenches. But watching these guys in the trenches in Ukraine, you can't get behind cover. You can't even crawl into a dugout. That drone is, if it sees you, you're going to die, and it's going to get a close up look of your face. They don't even drop bombs anymore now. They just fly the drones directly into the soldiers, and and when you see these guys running from these things, if you have a trench in World War One, you've got cover from machine gun fire and small arms fire. You've got decent cover from artillery fire unless you take a direct hit. But with drones, if they see you, it doesn't matter if you're in the trench. It doesn't matter if you go into a dugout or a bunker. It's going to fly in there and kill you. And I find that to be a kind of terrifying that not even World War One could match. It's horrible, and it's the future. I'll tell you something else too about this, Aaron, about this drone warfare thing. Technology has done something that I didn't think was possible, and that is, it has taken us back to a pre-industrial era where you are actually looking at the face of the person you're killing. I mean, you're looking them right in the face, and it is just horrible.